This video is supported by Squarespace. Hey, Marcus House with you here. Well, I wouldn't say this week has been quite as crazy as the last, but I tell you, it has certainly been an interesting one. Lots of great detail to share on Starship development, a record-breaking Falcon 9 flight, disaster for the Vega C launch, and numerous issues at the International Space Station. What is the plan for the Soyuz up here since it was hit with assumed space debris? Similar debris, perhaps, that delayed the spacewalk until late this week. Well, we've got all that today and much more.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Alright, let's start off with Ship 24. After its static fire last week, it once again lost a few of its tiles. You can see them missing here on the underside of the aft flaps. If we compare these images side by side, you can see that the felt is now dangling off here. As Musk stated in the past, they do fully expect some of the heat shield tiles to fall off during static fires, which for these tiles is probably a result from the vibrations reflecting off the concrete and back upward. These very tiles also fell off during the 6 engine static fire a while ago. A few more tiles also fell off right here, which is where SpaceX added that new weld doubler in recent work. They have moved very quickly to get these new tiles installed as soon as possible. This looks much better, doesn't it? Now, this is certainly in the top 5 questions that I get asked. Will these heat shield tiles work? Isn't this just a huge mess or disaster waiting to happen? Look, it's hard to say for certain given the flight and re-entry testing is needed, and these are all very different forces from static fires. Personally, I would have loved to see SpaceX fly some of the discarded prototypes this year as high and fast as possible, just ditching them in the ocean simply to get real data on the tiles. I might be being a little optimistic, but overall the tiles are holding better and better with each test. I'm wondering if it could just be that these tiles fell off due to not being fully clicked on as a result of the added thickness of that double weld. Speaking of those new welds, they aren't the only thing now installed at Ship 24 skirt to prevent buckling. You can probably recognise all of these vertical weld lines which join the stringers on the inside, and then there are these two areas which are right where the lower flap motor hardware is attached. SpaceX actually needed to move some of the internal supports to the outside to make enough room. The last major reinforcement hardware visible is this reinforcement belt, which ensures that all forces can be properly passed from the underpressurized skirt into the pressurized tanks. Now, just in case you're wondering, the function of the belt is quite similar to the external stringers visible on the booster, but those stringers would really complicate the thermal protection on the ship. Okay, so let's head over to Booster 9 at the Booster Cryo Station. Not long after its arrival at the station last week, SpaceX hooked 2 cryogenic flex hoses up to start its testing campaign. At 8 AM on Wednesday, the road was closed. Some testing was underway, but not for Ship 24. That was pretty obvious due to the tarps being added around the suborbital pad. No, this was the first ever cryogenic testing of a booster on the transport stand. Just for reference, previous similar tests for Booster 7 were all done with it resting on top of the can crusher. Over the course of an hour, quite a substantial amount of frost was seen climbing up the liquid oxygen tank. After the test, it detanked, of course, but interestingly, the vehicle didn't do any depress venting until far into that detanking process. Just like the orbital launch mount itself, this setup doesn't have any option to pump back the cryogenic liquid, so it was all released in a controlled manner over time. Next, it was time for the methane side of the tank farm, which activated, and frost soon appeared on the top methane tank, forming quite the impressive frost line. Eventually, that filled up around 2/3 of the main tank. After a while, the detanking operations started once again, followed by the road reopening, and later in the night, the booster depressurizing. I'd say that was a really great first test of Booster 9. Now, beside the berm that is protecting the orbital fuel farm, I talked a little about the extension on top last week. That is still coming along really nicely, but check this out right here. There is a bunch of concrete work going on which will most likely include this new pipe. This, we believe, is to offload any oxygen or nitrogen that cannot flow back from the booster into the tank farm. As we get closer to the first orbital launch of Starship, I'm sure that we're going to see a range of tests with all these new systems involved, some probably more visible than others. A great example from this week are these retraction tests involving both the booster quick disconnect as well as the ship quick disconnect arm. A few months ago, SpaceX also performed a booster QD retraction test during a booster 7 cryo test. SpaceX has also very recently upgraded how they seal the quick disconnect plates at the launch site to prevent ingress of foreign object debris. That upgrade has also been added to the ship quick disconnect on suborbital pad A, as well as the booster quick disconnect. I'm sure that eventually all of the quick disconnects will have a plate that looks quite similar to this one. Now, as I am sure that you are all aware, SpaceX has a lot of locations scattered all around the United States. One of these locations that is really intriguing me is this new SpaceX factory internally, we believe, called Project Echo. In these aerial shots captured by Joe Tegtmeyer, we can see the outer shell is almost finished here. This sizable factory is over 500,000 square feet, and it's only a bit smaller than SpaceX's HQ in Hawthorne. For such a large facility, its purpose remains a bit of a mystery, but with multiple ongoing scaling projects, there's a wide range of possibilities. Of course, we'll be keeping our eyes peeled for any news of deliveries of specific hardware that might indicate its purpose, such as Starlink version 2 satellite manufacture. And if you are interested in regular insights about these rapidly expanding Texas factories, check out Joe's channel linked in the description. Now let's quickly head back over to the Cape side again. Last week I talked about these two new pieces potentially being for another set of chopsticks. This still makes sense as pieces for another carriage were also close by. What is interesting is that over at the tower segments we see these two shorter pillars. Now perhaps SpaceX is just slightly reorganising the layout of the last tower sections again, because this is a size that we haven't seen in the construction of the tower for Starbase Texas or for the tower at Launch Complex 39A. Now it is that time of the year again as we rocket towards the end of 2022, and just like last year, the super generous artists of spaceflight have been added again with Kids Draw Rockets. I was very much hoping that we would get to see this again after the amazing work the last 2 years, but this year I think that they've outdone themselves. The idea, of course, is that kids around the world submit their drawings to be transformed by the many talented artists out there, and I think it is safe to say that they've gone above and beyond here. It is a huge inspiration out there to the kids following the industry, and it's such a neat way for the artists of spaceflight to also send those holiday greetings. I had a chat with a few of them, and it is clear to me that this event is one of the things that they look forward to the most every year. I won't go and list everybody individually because, hey, the work speaks for itself. Each artist is shown here with their Twitter account, so if you aren't following, well, you know what to do. I've got everybody listed in the description too. It is a huge help for them, and really without the social media attention by you, none of it is even possible. So thanks to you for making this a thing. In fact, without you, none of us exist in this strange social media world, and that is me included. So thanks for allowing me to have this dream job, even being able to share it with you all. More Falcon 9 action again this week, and a record-breaking booster on this Starlink mission. And would you believe it has been close to 2 months since the last Starlink launch? Yep, SpaceX has been super busy with launches with so many client and government contracts that it took that long to get back to Starlink. 9 other flights between that though, so SpaceX certainly hasn't been slowing down. More on that in just a second, but first, huge thank you to Squarespace today supporting this video. They offer this great all-in-one platform designed to make it easy for you to set up your online presence to promote a business, your brand, or even yourself. Perhaps you've got a podcast or blog and you want to build a following to provide enthusiastic followers with specific information. Well, there is no better way to start than by simply taking the dive. Simply choose one of the amazing templates and begin entering your content. There are loads of them too, all categorized to make it simple to find what you are after, and there are so many neat features to explore. Just one example, you can make yourself stand out by gathering subscribers with automatic sign-up forms. Then all you need to do is create branded email campaigns for them using the equally useful email template system. You can even create revenue streams with your content by using all of the monetization controls within member areas. You could sell access to video classes or training sessions for your fan base, and you can even give members the option to choose a recurring fee schedule if you are offering a frequent service. If you want to check it out for yourself, head to squarespace.com/MarcusHouse from the link in the description and save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thank you, Squarespace. So yes, here we had Falcon 9 on pad 39A less than 34 hours after the SWAT and O3B missions. Yes, it was time for SpaceX's 59th flight for this year and another 54 Starlink satellites bound for orbit. The lighting conditions for this launch were great too, given the time of day. The Earth here lit up in the background on the ascent. I just love speeding up the ascent footage as the exhaust plume expands out with the atmosphere thinning. Is it just me that loves that shot? Anyway, with main engine cutoff and stage separation, it was time for the record-breaking landing. Yep, this was the 15th flight and landing of booster 1058, the booster with the NASA worm logo that first launched the Crew Dragon Demo 2 mission with Bob and Doug. That seems like a long time ago now, doesn't it? The logo here is pretty much completely hidden somewhere under the now very black coating. Quite the service life this one has had, helping to deploy over 700 various spacecraft. I've just got to point out the beautiful uninterrupted footage as it smashed its way through the atmosphere for another successful touchdown on the drone ship Just Read the Instructions stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. Well, almost uninterrupted apart from the camera switching away right on touchdown. As always with these Starlink missions, there was no coverage of the payload deployment, but it was later confirmed on social media. What else was shared though? Well, here was SpaceX mentioning that Starlink now has more than 1 million active subscribers. That is a big deal. And just on the subject of Starlink satellites themselves, a few weeks ago, the Federal Communication Commission granted Starlink partial approval to place 7,500 Starlink version 2 satellites into orbit. Now, SpaceX were requesting 30,000, so I guess that this will be staged with future approvals. Because these will not be launching on Starship anytime soon, given that Ship 24 and 25 seem to have the initial deployment doors permanently sealed, the plan, as far as we know, is still to begin launching modified version 2s on Falcon 9. Now, that was expected to start before the end of this very year, so it remains to be announced. Now, after several delays caused by a recent Soyuz leak, which I'll talk about shortly, along with the ISS needing to complete a hazard avoidance maneuver due to space debris, it was time once again for the dynamic duo Frank Rubio and Josh Cassada to suit up for their spacewalk. Towards the end of the week, the pair set off from the Quest airlock for hours of tiring work with the objective to install the 4th out of 6 rollout solar arrays at the Port P4 truss structure. This was the 257th spacewalk in support of the space station assembly, upgrades and maintenance, and for both of them, this was their 3rd spacewalk. These new iRosa solar arrays will ultimately boost power generation up by 30%, increasing the station's total available power from 160 kilowatts up to 215 kilowatts. You may actually recall from the last EVA a few weeks ago that a get-ahead task was performed to unscrew some retaining bolts. Well, having already addressed that task, they wasted no time removing the iRosas from the carrier assembly. The skillful operators at the controls of Canadarm2 moved Josh quickly into position, where Frank assisted in securing the solar array assembly to the mounting bracket. Some great views of the Earth below here as the pair moved around the station. Before long, it was time to roll out the array, which is always fun to watch, taking about 9 minutes to fully deploy. And there we have it, more power generation is now available on the station. With that, all tasks were completed and it was time to head back for a well-deserved rest. But first, the usual stowing of tools and other equipment, entry to the Quest airlock, and time to close the hatch. There are just 2 more iRosa solar arrays remaining to be installed, and those are going to be delivered in 2023 on a Cargo Dragon resupply mission. Now, the actual spacewalk itself was delayed due to the leak from the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft docked to the space station. I was tempted to cover this last week, however, the news was kind of, well, still developing at the time. In short though, the external radiator cooling system on the Soyuz had begun leaking, and it is actually quite a nail-biting scenario. Soon after last week's video went live, a robotic inspection using the Canadarm2 observed a small hole. The surface of the radiator around that hole was discoloured too, so it was thought that perhaps a micrometeoroid impact may have caused this. Now, it was rumoured that temperatures had begun to spike within the vehicle to around 50 degrees C, but Roscosmos posted here, and after a quick Google translation, they deny that, saying that instead it had been up around 30 degrees C. The big question though, was this vehicle now unfit for crew transport home? There are fears, of course, that the lack of coolant and the increased heating may cause damage to the flight computers. If we just have a look at this diagram here, the actual area of the vehicle affected is the service module, and although this entire section is discarded before re-entry along with the top orbital module, if there is something damaged in the service module that stops the thrusters, electronics or navigation systems from working, well, it could leave the returning crew in big trouble. So what does that mean for NASA astronaut Frank Rubio and the cosmonauts that would have been returning home on the vehicle? We were expecting an announcement on the plan during the week. One option speculated by many was that they could do an emergency return so that the heating issue didn't have time to build up and cause further damage. Maybe the next Soyuz in line could be sent up early with no crew autonomously to serve as a lifeboat. Could a Crew Dragon do the same? Well, I'll keep you posted once we know, because right now research is still ongoing. So compared to last week's massive heavy lift Ariane 5 rocket, this one is much smaller. Vega C is an upgrade to the small lift Vega rocket, and here we see it launching from French Guiana during the week. Up it rapidly rose from the pad, its exhaust plume lighting the way as it headed into the night sky. Sadly though, about 2.5 minutes into the flight, Mission Control became aware of an under pressure event with the second stage. To the viewing audience, all appeared to be going perfectly well until about 4 minutes into the flight, when the commentary team paused to listen to the engineers.
See that there's a problem with the trajectory.
A deviation in the trajectory graphic could be seen here, giving the casual observer first indications of serious trouble. The animation then added even more tension at the time, showing some weird wobbles, and then this. Yeah, that can't be good. Stefan, the CEO of Arianespace on screen here, was soon after advising the mission with its payloads was at that point lost, along with, of course, a heartfelt apology to their customers. So now the investigation into the anomaly begins. The highs and lows of trying to reach space could not be any clearer here. If we just rewind to the start of December, the European Commission awarded a contract to Arianespace for 5 Vega C launches of the Copernicus satellites. The contract covers those 5 Earth observation spacecraft to launch between 2024 and 2026. The NEO 5 and 6 satellites lost in this mission would have been the final batch in the series of next-generation imaging satellites. They would have generated very high-resolution Earth observation imagery right down to a tiny 30-centimetre resolution. That's pretty nuts when you consider that they would sit at around 620 kilometres overhead. The big question, of course, is where to from here? Will new NEO satellites be constructed to complete these same placements? Well, let's hope so. Now, things are starting to get real exciting with United Launch Alliance and the new engine that will be used on Vulcan Centaur. Indeed, we are talking about Blue Origin's BE4 engine that will also, of course, be installed on their future New Glenn rocket. Released this week was a video showing exquisite detail of the engine test firing. I'm pretty sure that this is the closest footage that we have seen of this engine. What we are seeing here is about 2.45 meganewtons of force roaring out of the engine on the test stand here. That is just a little bit more powerful than what Raptor 2 is predicted to be at 2.3 meganewtons, but remember that the BE4 here is a huge engine. It is a monster, as we can see here with humans for scale, and then we have the Raptor for comparison here. Raptor 2 can pack a similar amount of thrust into a smaller space. Now, stated in the video, Blue Origin needs to ensure that development cost is going to be competitive, so they've worked really hard on improving the design. They are looking at reusability as a factor, of course, and as Tori Bruno, ULA's CEO, mentioned during the week, they are aiming to, in the future at least, reuse these engines for at least 3 flights. Everything above that would just be a bonus. But Vulcan Centaur is an expendable rocket, I hear you say. Well, that is true for now, but in the future, they hope to employ this smart reuse technique to make it partially reusable by detaching the booster's aft section, including the engines, and then re-enter them with the aid of an inflatable heat shield. Similar to Rocket Lab, they want to then release a parachute and then catch them out out of the air. So yeah, kind of reusable, assuming that they can recertify them for flight afterwards. Just imagine how hard it's going to be to engineer in the release of the engine end of the rocket. I'd love to see the mechanisms involved in doing that cleanly. Anyway, recently we've seen the new BE4 engine arriving to be installed on the Vulcan Centaur, and as they said, it is great to take delivery of something that they've been waiting 3 years for. And hey, this time of year, I think we can all appreciate a neat unboxing video. This beast is going to hopefully launch for the very first time early next year. It will use 2 BE4 engines, allowing ULA and its customers to push forward into the new era of heavy launch capability. So yes, lots of neat tidbits of space action this week, even though it was a bit of a quieter week in terms of actual launches. A few interesting delays that I'll get to in a second, but yes, hopefully you are winding down a little over Christmas if you celebrate it, and having a more relaxing run down to the end of 22. Wow, where did those past few months go? Now, I have a question for you actually. What was your favourite video from the channel throughout the year? One of the deep dive topics perhaps, or one of the regular news updates perhaps? It's always useful information as I plan out the months ahead. But yes, it's amazing of you being here each week watching along, especially the amazing channel supporters here from Patreon or YouTube memberships. If you would also like ad-free versions of the videos and your name listed right here, that is a great way to help out. Remember as well that you can fully customize and combine various designs like this on the store to make something really unique for you. The links to all of that is below. And yeah, you may be wondering where Rocket Lab's launch was in the video today. Well, sadly, due to the string of launch delays, that is now not happening until the new year. They are treating that launch with a lot of care, of course, given that it will be their very first launch of Electron from US soil. Really looking forward to that Hawkeye mission though. And yeah, we've also been patiently awaiting the first flight of RS-12, which has now been pushed into January, so stay tuned for both of those exciting milestones. Finally today though, a salute to NASA's InSight lander, now officially retired after years of scientific discoveries. It is going to remain on the surface until at some point humans place it into a future Mars museum. Well, let's hope so anyway. In the meantime, of course, do check out the recent video where we calculate a rough total radiation exposure of a Mars short-term stay option from NASA's future potential plan. Very interesting. Then we've got a bunch of other equally interesting topics on the right. Have a terrific weekend, and I'll catch you for the final video of the year next week.